Now, before I move on to what happens if we add to the radicand, either inside or outside, we have to talk about the domain and range of radical functions, or really here square root functions. Now, domain and range are extremely important here because if you saw with a parent function, and I'm not going to draw all the numbers, it looked like this. And you can see right away that when I drew my table, and this is y equals square root of x, that's because I am ending up with positive numbers, right? I'm putting in 1 and I'm getting, because I'm only getting the positive square root. I am not doing the negative square root. And because of that, I am limited so that my domain is only positive numbers. So the domain of the parent function is going to be x is greater than or equal to 0. Well, this is going to also define my range, because the parent function range also means that y is greater than or equal to 0. But what happened when I changed, right, and I multiplied by a? So you saw the first example that we did. We had y equals 3 times square root of x. And if you'll remember the table we used, and I'm just going to make sure I'm being clear about which function is which. We had, again, 0, 0, 1, 3, 4, 6, and 9, 9. And you can see, if you remember that function, I'm not going to draw all the details, but it looked something like that. So its domain, again, was all positive numbers. So it was x is greater than or equal to 0. And equally, you can see the same thing for y. The range was y is greater than or equal to 0. But what was that third example, right? When we did example, actually it was called example 2, but it was our third example. And I think I can, let's see, I'm just going to fit it over here. No, I'm doing it over here. Y equals negative 1/2 square root of x. Well, in that example, I had 0, 0. I had 1 and negative 1/2. I had 4, negative 1. And I'm just going to skip, let's see, 9 and negative 1.5. Okay? And so when I draw that, and I'm going to draw this a different color just to avoid confusion, it looked a lot like this. That was y equals negative 1/2 square root of x. And here you can see I have the same domain, right? It's still x is greater than or equal to 0. I'm still limited to positive numbers. But because the a value is negative, my range is different, right? My range, my y values are less than or equal to 0. I don't have a single positive y, right? They're all 0 or less. And because a square root function is limited in the x-axis, and you're going to be stretching it and shrinking it and moving it up and moving it down, because of that limit, you really have to specify the domain and range. And so as I go on and I do examples 3 and 4, and we look at what happens when you add a number to this radical, either inside or outside, we have to, at each point, specify the domain and the range. And I took a separate slide to do just this because it is that important in this chapter. So you have to, on your homework, you have got to tell me what is the domain and what is the range, and be very clear. I'm going to stop this here, and in the next video, I'm going to do examples 3 and 4, and we'll take a look at what happens when we add a number outside the radicand and inside the radicand.